Let's call the meeting. Thank you. Sorry about that. Let's call the meeting to order at 5:31. First item on the agenda is roll call. Here.
Here.
Trisha Braun, Brian Wallace,
Here.
Chris Thomas, Kevin Phelps,
Here.
Chris Zellner.
Here.
All right, next item on the agenda is minutes. Do we have any corrections to the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes from January 8th. Second.
All right, and all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And I'll abstain since I wasn't here. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have any public comments today? No public comments. Do we have anyone online? Nope. Nope. All right. Next item on the agenda then is business item. Item number 1 is public hearing and discussion action on a certified map, rezone from A1 to PUD and a resolution to vacate a portion of Dolan Avenue to transfer lands from Woodland Crest Outlot 2 to Kilkenny Farms. This is an item for action by the final action by the village board. And I believe is that over to you, Lauren, to present?
So currently Dolan Avenue ends in a cul-de-sac. Actually, let me share this really quickly. Oh, come on, where's my share screen button? Yes, I did it. Okay. So Dolan Avenue currently ends in a cul-de-sac. This is on page 9 of your packet, if you want to look at it. That lower bulb between lot 70 and lot 71, this as part of a land sale would extend Dolan Avenue up to those new lots 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then on page 13 of your exhibit, it shows where we would, where the owners would be vacating the existing bulb edges along those lots, 69 through 72, to make it a straight road.
And to be clear, that it's not existing.
No, it's
today
not existing, it's planned,
This is by
sorry.
design, but
Yes.
as you can see on this map, none of that improvement paved surface is there yet.
Okay.
So this is a design change.
Okay.
So Dolan Avenue would go straight up to that new bulb. And we have all the information from one side. So we are recommending conditional approval contingent upon the land sale being finalized.
All right. Thank you. All right, let's open the public hearing at 5:34. Have any comments or statements? I'm sorry, Brian.
Oh, just to piggyback, the zoning is a pretty simple change. In other words, essentially just adding those 4 lots that are on the screen right now into the existing residential zoning for Kilkenny Farms, as if they had been included in the residential zoning all along. I mean, very straightforward.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's open the public hearing at 5:34. Do we have anyone who would like to speak on this matter?
I just want to make sure that all the.
I'm sorry.
And one note, I do see attendance virtually. If someone on the Zoom does wish to speak during the hearing, any of the hearings today, do click raise hand and we'll bring those individuals in to speak.
Thank you. Yep, yeah.
We just want to make sure that we're approving the GDP amendment and also the CSM, and then vacating the, these edges involved. Those are things that we want to make sure that they're all covered by your recommendation, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Otherwise, I think it's pretty straightforward, and Connor will explain item number 2, which is really the heart of it.
Okay. All right, thank you very much for the clarification. All right, so the public hearing is still open. Do we have anyone who'd like to make a comment? Do we have anyone online who would like to make a comment?
And keeping an eye on it, I don't see a hand raised at the moment.
All right, going once, going twice, seeing no comments, we'll close the public hearing at 5:35 p.m. All right, Commission, do we have any questions or anything we'd like to ask or say? Seeing none. Chris? No? Brian? Joe?
I'm curious, there was some discussion. Is there any ability, not that I'm seeing here at least, to have any pedestrian access between Endress and Dolan? Is that something that could be considered, or is that not really?
I've not heard anybody propose that. Any connection. That's West Point.
Good point.
Okay. Kevin?
Nope.
No. And Joe, I'm sorry, did you have anything else?
No, that was it.
All right, I will then make the motion to recommend to the village board conditional approval of the certified survey map, the rezone from A1 to PUD, and the resolution to vacate a portion of Dolan Avenue to transfer lands from Woodland Crest Outlot 2 to Kilkenny Farms, pending completed and approved submittal of the Woodland Crest Outlot 2 application. Yes, Brian.
I would just suggest maybe modifying that last portion to say pending acquisition of the land by Kilkenny Farms.
Pending acquisition of the land by Kilkenny Farms. So, right, so moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, item number 2 is public hearing discussion / action on request by Forward Development Group LLC to rezone Woodland Crest Outlot 2 from A1 to planned unit development and amend the existing Woodland Crest general development plan to include this lot. So Lauren, back to you.
So this is with Forward Development Group. We are currently working on getting a full submittal based on staff comments. And so they're here to give a presentation. There has been a little bit of change from the previous site plan that you've seen. So we're giving them a chance to come here and have that discussion with you. So just related to the previous item, it's this lot 3 is the one related to Dolan Avenue. So these two are kind of paired together. The rest of the development would happen on lots 1 and 2 of what is currently Outlot 2. I believe we have Connor here from Forward Development Group, if you want to give a presentation. And then I have the side by side of, if you want to put that up.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful.
Okay.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks, Lauren. Connor Kearney here, Forward Development. Thanks for having us back. Before you this evening is a review. We had met with village staff recently to review the application and talk through a number of feedback as a result of the technical staff meeting. As a result, we're here this evening to just continue to gather feedback, present project progress with the ultimate goal to resubmit an application by this Wednesday, the 14th, which would be revised per village staff and technical staff meeting feedback. We'll jump in with the key updates on the site plan, as Lauren mentioned. So what is before you this evening is generally consistent with the November Plan Commission concept review as it relates to the proposed land uses and the land divisions remaining consistent. The key item that we would like to discuss this evening relates to building orientation and site design. It's a bit more specific and detailed on the design side, but it is something that impacts the GDP and how that building on the southernmost portion moves forward, what's labeled as 5.2 there. So you'll note the key item that's been changed is the building orientation of that 75 unit building on the southern portion of the site. The building was previously shown as an elongated L type shape, which you can see on the left-hand side of the screen there. It is currently now proposed to be a U-shaped design, which is similar to phase 1 across the street on Simon Crest Way. And our architect proposed that design change for 2 main reasons. First, it was to comply with parking requirements per the R5 zoning. The building either needed to be elongated to the east and extended, or we incorporate a wing to the south, which is the result of the U shape, to gain the additional square footage to meet the parking requirements. We felt that extending the length of that building closer to the Kilkenny Farms subdivision to the east would not be beneficial. We thought that would result in a very large facade to the north, especially for those units. The flat style multifamily shown on 5.1 there, it would essentially be a massive wall of building. We wanted to avoid that. And number two, we also wanted to avoid getting closer to the residences along Kilkenny Farms. We're doing our absolute best to maximize that buffer space to the east. I believe R5 zoning requires a rear yard setback a minimum of 40 feet. We're currently showing that building staying 60 feet away, so in excess by 20 feet of the standard. We thought that was an important design decision to uphold, and the result is this U-shaped building. That was the first comment that we, through the design process with our architect, where we landed. Secondly, has to do with amenities. So you'll notice the addition of proposed pool in this refined design here. And that has to deal with, we're looking at this as a community. So it's not just phase one, which is the 78 unit building across Salmon Crestway, not just the 75 unit that's proposed here or just the flats. We're looking at how we can integrate this into a community for multifamily and looking at it as 100 and some units here as opposed to just one isolated building. And with that came the concept of shared amenities. We're proposing to have the same project manager or property manager on site here, which they would share amenity space. So essentially, if you're a resident in phase two, you'd have access to the large community room in phase one and fitness facility in phase one. And if you're a resident in phase one, you'd have access to the pool and exterior patio and grilling stations in phase two. So, there are some operational items we need to work through, and technical staff feedback brought those up as well. It's how do tenants safely cross the street, for example, how you control access to those amenities. Those are all items and details we're going to need to figure out, likely through the SIP process. But we felt the addition of those amenities for the future residents were important to add. So those are the two main driving decisions that resulted in the change of that building orientation. The rest of the application is very similar to what you've already seen. The architecture and buildings themselves have not been changed, same style, same proposed unit mixes and so forth. But another key update in the revised application materials that we're envisioning to come in this Wednesday is actually a reduction in code modifications. So what's in the packet this evening included two main items that are relatively large items. It's a building height that we had accepted or requested a code exemption on or a modification. And then the parking, which after discussions with staff, we're in compliance with R5 zoning on the building height and the parking, and we're going to be removing those from our GDP application and simplifying the code modifications. So albeit different from slightly different from what you reviewed in the November timeframe of 2023, we feel working through with our architect and our engineers, we've arrived at more complete and detailed design proposal here, and we're looking forward to your thoughts and feedback. So thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so let's open the public hearing at 5:44 p.m. Do we have anybody that would like to speak on this issue on the agenda? Do we have anyone online?
We do have one individual online, and if they wish to speak, please click the raise hand button and we'll bring you in.
See no hands in the audience, no one stepping forward, so going once, going twice. All right, let's close the hearing at 5:44 p.m. And Plan Commission, what questions do we have? Kevin, do you have any?
So nothing changed in the building, same square footage, same apartments, everything's exactly the same as it was.
The sizing slightly changed. So what we had to do once we got, that was a concept level. What we do in concept level is essentially we take bubbles for unit sizes and just stack them and get a general idea of what that footprint is. We have a pretty good idea based on other designs and other buildings we built, what it's going to be. But the net of it is we needed between 5 to 10% more in that building and didn't want to extend it even further. So that resulted in this. So it is slightly different in the actual square footage. We're reviewing the unit mix with our property manager right now. The intent isn't to change anything dramatically, but could we add more 2 beds and less studios? That's to be determined yet. But the intent is still to keep the design for that specifically, that 75 unit building similar to phase 1 out there.
And is the parking close right now to the point if you start adding 2 bedrooms, parking is going to become an issue?
So, and I did notice in the updated parking, I think it's chapter 133 or something along those lines, a new parking ordinance that was adopted. There wasn't a mention of underground requirements specifically. What we try to hit is a minimum of 1-to-1 underground per units. So even though the requirement would be 2 stalls for a 2-bedroom, one would be underground and one would be surface. So from just a property management and market perspective, we try to maintain 1-to-1 underground, and then the excess will be parked on the surface, and that's what we're going to be striving to hit here.
Thank you.
Joe, did you have any questions?
Kevin covered the majority of what I was looking for. As far as the underground parking, is that entire footprint underground?
Correct. Yep.
And I would assume that there would be additional design documents where there could be multiple entrances or whatever. I am just looking at that long curve all the way through.
Yeah, and due to the grades, we will likely be operating under a single entrance. The way the site transitions, it's dramatically lower on the southern end of it and on the east end. So that's where we have that entrance there. As you transition closer to Simon Crestway, it's a little bit higher. So we likely would not have a runway to make another connection on the other wing of the building. But that building length and that underground system would not be dissimilar from phase 1. I think if you look at site plan 4 there, it's slightly larger U-shaped, and that's a single entrance as well.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Brian, did you have any questions?
So 3-story, 75 units in primary building, and how many units in? 75 unit, 3-story, how many units? And those are 2 stories, the 5 separate buildings, right?
They are, yep, that'd be proposed 50 units, 10-unit buildings there.
And they just have underground parking for each unit, just as part of the first floor.
So yeah, not underground, but it's a tuck under stall, if you will. So they have a private garage stall, 1 per unit, and then a driveway that another car could park in if you have 2 people living there or if you have visitors.
Is that, I didn't see a rendering of that. Is that a 1-story or 2-story above the,
It would be a 2-story, and I think exhibit E of the original application has some elevations of those as well.
Okay. So the 75 unit building is 3 stories at Simon Crestway, but in essence, you're almost like 4 stories to Dolan, to the residents there.
I'd have to defer to the engineer on the grading plan. The intent would not be to create more mass on that east side. Now, on the southern side, you may have to deal with foundation with additional landscape screening. But once we know the detailed grading of that, the intent is not to make it look more massive, but work within the site constraints and the grading.
And then how many total units have you got? 75? How many were in each of those 5?
Each of those are 10-unit buildings, so 50 total there, so 125 total.
Thank you.
Chris, do you have questions?
Can you share what 5.3 is going to be, what thoughts are on that property?
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
just looking at it because where's the access? Is it going to be under this road that you're planning on? Or is it? I'm just curious what your plan for that.
Yep, so 5.3, once, hopefully we can work to procure the approvals for the GDP amendment and the CSM, and once that's accomplished, 5.3 would be sold to Kilkenny Farms LLC for the Dolan Ave extension. So we would have no part in that. That would be just transferred, and they would continue the development from there.
Good, okay. And then for the Dolan Drive folks right now, do we know where houses are currently located that are built on that street? Is there any on that street right now? How far up is what I'm getting at?
Putting houses there until we knew what the program was on the last little ones.
Got it. Okay. So I'm trying to grasp from the back of those houses how far the tallest structure is going to be. I know you're putting some sort of barrier there, but is that going to include hill, up, or is it mostly plantings, or what are we looking at?
It would be a landscape buffer, so we do intend to screen it with larger evergreens or canopy trees. Prior to those maturing, really the visual impact's going to be driven by the actual distance of the structure from the neighboring structure. So due to the natural grade change, anything closer is obviously just going to seem larger. So we're doing everything we can to push the structures closer to Simon Crestway. That's the main thing driving that visual separation. Until those trees mature, it's not going to be a wall buffer, if you will.
I guess when people buy those lots, they're gonna know it's there, if it's there, versus those who are already there, really are kind of down from it still. Might still see it, I guess, from different angles, but
Yeah, some of the sections do help, and we'll touch up these sections just to ensure all the measurements are 100% accurate in the angles. The idea would be to be under the step back requirements for the R5 zoning. They do have buffer step back requirements, so to make sure our structures do not impede on those.
and then my last question is the structures, the 5 up on top. Is that something you've done at Forward in other locations?
We're planning it right now in the city of Verona, and we've entitled it in the village of Oregon. We partnered with another developer in the village of Oregon in building those. They're a much simpler construction style than a larger 3-story garden style. It's less, you don't have to worry about the underground parking and a few of those others. So it's not dissimilar from other units in the market. We haven't built them ourselves on any development just yet, though.
So I would assume then you've done some sort of research from others who have to see that that's a successful build and successful or well-received project that you'd be able to sell, rent, however you want to look at it.
Yeah, well, we believe so. From a sales standpoint, it becomes a little bit more difficult simply because of how those units are designed. With the garages on the first floor, you have, I believe there's 6 units up top and then 4 units down below. So to create a fee simple product, it gets complicated with the condoization of multiple floors there. So it is a rental driven product, but it's something, it's a little different target of a tenant pool. It's private entry, it's a lower density, it's someone that might be transitioning into want more private space or that is looking to enter the home market, but isn't ready to buy just yet. Whereas the 3-story garden style, it's more of a standard multifamily for some of those that may not be.
So from a rental standpoint, would those probably end up being a little more expensive?
The rental rates are more expensive than the 3-story garden style, but not dramatically more. Those are 1 and 2 bedrooms right now. We were exploring adding some 3 bedrooms, and that was a comment at the November Plan Commission, was to explore some 3 bedrooms. So we've asked our architect to look into that, and our property manager is doing more market research. I know the Laurel has 3 bedrooms right next door, but a few others that are new in the market do not. I think out of Heritage Hills, the 198 units up there, I don't think they have any 3 bedrooms on that one. So we're kind of trying to understand the market as what it can bear for 3 bedrooms and if we can incorporate those.
Thank you.
That was my question, if you were looking at any 3 bedrooms, so I appreciate you answering
Yep.
that. I think I don't have any substantial questions, except for on page 2 of the application, 25 of our packet, it says 178 multifamily units. Is it 75 or 78 in that?
75, 78 refers to the first phase. So that may have been a typo,
Okay.
but yeah, 75.
All right, okay, so I just wanted to clarify that.
Yep.
Today, you're just here for an informational meeting. We don't have any motions, so unless anyone has any other questions? No? Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you for
Appreciate
having
it
us
and
back.
The update. Yeah. All right, and now we open public hearing on it. Wait, we had public hearing. Sorry, we had long questions, my bad. Item number 3, discuss and take action on a request by Badger Amusements for a conditional use permit to allow 25,000 square foot gravel parking area at 306 Moravian Valley Road. And this is an item for final action by the Plan Commission. And I think that's back to you, Lauren.
So this is as you said, a request from Badger Amusements. They currently have 1 building. They're looking to possibly expand into a 2nd building, and they're looking to do this as a phased approach with the parking first and the new building second. There are some missing pieces to the submittal that we're working on with Badger Amusements. So it's not what's the word I'm looking for? We're, so we're not recommending this for approval tonight, just until we get all of that information that we need. And then we have also talked with them about, what are their plans for that second building and some of the questions that might come out of that. So for tonight, we're not recommending any action. I don't think we have anyone here from Badger Amusements to speak on the issue. So.
All right. Do you have any questions, Plan Commission? No? I don't think we should, or I don't have any. Go ahead, Brian. Yes.
So I guess there's a couple of things I just want to point out in light of a matter that we had before the Plan Commission within the last year, I think it was on Division Street. We don't know what they want to do with this second building, but you can only have one principal structure on a property. And that's the issue that the person on Division Street ran into. Unless you have PUT zoning, or quite frankly, there's some language in the village code that we need to change, that it theoretically gives you the right to allow a second principal structure by conditional use permit. And I don't really see a validity to that. I think that's old language based on how conditional uses used to be addressed as opposed to the new statutory changes. The other concern that I have, just honestly, is we have a sentence here that says compacted stone or gravel may be used only with the approval of the Plan Commission. And what I'm struggling with is there's no standards there. You know, why would we allow compacted gravel for one entity and not for another one? Especially when we just within the last year, you know, that individual who came forward wanted to have a gravel driveway and we specifically said no. And so it sounds like this is going to come back to you, but keep those concepts in mind as it does, because you're not going to have any obligation to grant this. And if you do, it's probably going to be inconsistent with what we did within, on Division Street.
Are you hoping to get feedback or perspective from plan commissioners today, Brian and Lauren, as to how they might be willing or not be willing to receive a request for gravel parking?
Yes, that would be helpful.
That will
Todd.
help us forward back to the
Yes.
applicant.
Yes.
Well, I'm thanking for bringing that up because I remember that one specifically. So I would say that without some further clarification, I would be against moving forward with the way it is laid out right now.
Joe,
Same as Brian.
all right, Chris,
Same for me.
Kevin.
And another.
All right, I think we're all in agreement. It's good to be consistent. All right, should we be looking at changing the language then that allows?
I think, this is I would say lots of times municipalities will go through kind of a cleanup, zoning code cleanup. That might be something that we want to contemplate. These are just part of the issue is, and when you look at the principal structure, so it's relevant to this agenda item is, a long time ago, municipalities, Waunakee included, I think, adopted code provisions that allowed for conditional uses. And the thought process was, well, if we don't want to allow it, we're just not going to allow it. But the state statutes have been changed now. We still have the authority to deny a conditional use application, but it's become much more difficult. And so for all these municipalities and for the language that we have in our code here, it just doesn't seem to fit anymore. And I'm struggling with why, a second principal structure, for example, would be allowed for one lot, but not for another, when usually if you really want to approach it, you have the ability to do a condo development if you want, or you can do a PUD if the lot size is big enough. And so it caught my eye as I was getting, looking at what was being proposed by this applicant.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that feedback. We should put that on the list of.
Yep. And so we have started keeping a list of some of the things in the zoning code that need to be revisited. So that will be a project coming up here soon.
Excellent. Great, thanks. We're gonna keep you busy. So we're gonna keep you very busy. All right, and so we do have actually on our agenda a recommended motion to defer action. Do we need to make a motion to defer action? Or can we just?
At this point, I don't, as Lauren said, I think the application was kind of deemed incomplete
Yeah.
because part of the basis for the request was this second structure, and we don't know what that looks at. So I don't think you need to take any action.
Excellent. All right, next item on the agenda then is discuss and take action on a certified survey map and amendment to the Monticello Square condominium document for a lot line adjustment at 1310 Montadon Avenue, and this is an item for final action by Village Board.
So this is currently a single condominium plat, and what they do is right now they share parking between what is listed here as lot 1 and lot 3. And so to be able to share that parking, what they're looking to do is split off what's called Outlot 1, which would be parking. We have noted that there's a water main on that. So there, if that water main serves both Lot 3 and Lot 1, it would have to be conveyed as a public utility, a public water main. So they are looking at putting an easement on there for access, as well as locating the water mains and the laterals to make sure that they do or do not need to convey that as a public utility. So we're also looking at this as a conditional one, pending that information being provided to city staff and approved by them. Or sorry, village staff. I did it.
All right, questions, Plan Commission? Kevin, do you have any questions?
Not right now.
Not right now. All right, Chris?
Same rate, not right now.
All right, Brian?
So lot 2. I'm assuming what is listed as lot 1, is that what was originally thought as lot 2? Do we know that? Cause I see lot 3 there. Lot 2 is undeveloped. Or that'll be new lot 2, right? And then formerly lot 1 and the adjacent lot 3.
I think there was a 3-lot CSM,
Original.
right, and so in the middle.
Is it-
lot,
I'm sorry, Mike, the video is picking up none of this, so for those watching or the recording, sorry.
Todd?
I think there were three,
Lots, one, like, turn it
Oh,
up.
yeah.
oh, there we go.
It was 1, 2, and 3 of CSM 1, 2, 2, 3, 4. And so this was lot 2, and we're splitting off part of that and shifting it to lot 3. But we had to label that lot 1 because that's the main lot that's in the new CSM. It's a little confusing, I understand, but. So we're just shifting that outlot 1 down to the condo, the Monticello Square, that's the one with the bank and the Mexican restaurant. So the dance studio. Don thought that there was more of a need for parking and a driveway in that, so it'd be better to have it be part of the condo plat.
Outlot 1 will be tied to lot 3.
Yes, and it will actually become part of a condo plat. I don't know if you have the condo plat in your, that we put on the screen. But,
Oh, sorry, but
It'll become part of the condo plat. It'll be a common element for the condominium. Even further confusing, the Tierneys own all the units in the condo, and it's just all rent, it's all rented.
Yeah, so like if lot 1 were to get developed at some point,
Oh, lot 1 at the far north edge, yeah.
then how does that,
Well, that could be sold or it could be developed and rented.
and then outlot 3 gets to an easement potentially that they can use that as well, or is
So
that?
lot 3 is the condominium
Yep,
plat, including the outlot, yeah. Yeah, that's the condo plat, and they've added additional space right here onto that.
okay. So I'm assuming that would be a future agreement potentially if they were gonna have some sort of easement on that portion for future development to the north.
Yeah, there could be, right, what you could have, I guess, is if the lot further to the north was developed someday. I don't know if you guys don't remember, I remember when it was gonna.
I do remember.
Yeah, okay, anyway, we won't go through that. Don would probably talk to you about a half hour on that.
Yeah.
If that was developed and it needed access through a driveway arrangement with this condo thing, because the Tierneys own all the pieces, they could just grant an easement to
Okay.
themselves and get a driveway through there.
And and this may be for staff, so then you talked about the water line that's in that area. So if lot 1 were to, and I'm projecting, probably maybe it shouldn't be, but if lot 1 is moved and developed by somebody else potentially, does that service have to be upgraded then or deeded over or whatever?
that's why we're looking to do that now, is if that water main is expected to serve both lots, it would already be conveyed as a public utility, a public main.
Okay. So that is part of this.
So that's part of the conditional that we're looking for
Planning
is,
planning ahead.
Perfect, thank you.
We've had inquiries from, daycares and, all kinds of different things, but nothing is final yet on that northern lot.
All right, thank you. Other questions? Anyone? Chris? No? Joe? No? All right, I will make the motion to recommend that the village, recommend to the village board conditional approval of the CSM and amendment to the Monticello Square condominium documents for a lot line adjustment at 1310 Montadon Avenue pending staff recommendations. All right, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Sorry.
I said I didn't have my thing on when I second, so.
All right, anyone opposed? All right, motion carries. Next item on the agenda. Discuss and take action on site plan for Centennial Park splash pad, and this is an item for final action by the Plan Commission.
so this, so for this, we are presenting to you kind of the final designs and looking for approval of the site plan. And I believe we have someone joining us online from Parkitecture to answer any questions, I believe. Is that the case? I'll let Bill handle it.
Yeah. Blake,
Okay.
So I guess we're open for questions.
Right.
I'm keeping it simple.
Short and sweet.
You bet.
All right. So I'll ask the first questions. It does say that there'll just be minimal changes to the parking lot that are regarding the safety and the location of the accessible parking spaces. So where on the map will we find the accessible parking spaces? Okay, right up there. So nice and close to the new entryway to it. All right, Joe, do you have any questions?
Not so far.
All right, Kevin?
Bill, was that all existing parking or is there added?
No, it'll be existing parking.
It's all existing.
Yep.
Okay.
With the modification to make those handicap stalls current.
Hey, Bill, this is Blake. I'm here now. I just got promoted.
Good
I
man.
can speak to the ADA. We're actually making the existing striped stalls technically compliant, which they are not currently. So we're adding truncated domes, we're adding striped loading zones and concrete access ways beyond them. So now you will technically have ADA compliant parking.
Excellent. Excellent. Kevin, other questions that you had?
Nope, just picturing Waunakee and how all that's gonna work, but other than that, I'm good.
Chris?
I think Waunakee is gonna work great.
Yeah.
Cause they'll work around it and we'll provide them with the opportunities to be successful as they always are. So, I think it's great.
Brian?
I have no questions. Looking forward to it.
This is really exciting.
You bet.
This is really exciting. All right, does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve of the site plan for Centennial Park splash pad pending final staff approval of the landscape plan.
Second.
All right, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Next item on the agenda. Discuss and take action on a possible amendment to Village Code, Section 133-19, related to retail building size, and this is a final item for final action by the village board. Lauren, I think it's to you, or is it to
Or
Todd?
Ken. And so we're looking to have a discussion with the commission about whether you'd like to see staff take next steps in reviewing this and allowing you to take a closer look and deeper dive at a future commission meeting. The request was made by a couple members of the village board that this be considered. The last time Plan Commission discussed this is when our comp plan was updated. That was in 2017. Is that when our comp plan was done?
Yes.
Last update. So, and the question was raised then, hey, village board, are you comfortable, or commission board, are you comfortable with having the retail limitations on maximum size? The question was confirmed, and that limitation then continued and has been maintained. So so we want to find out whether there's interest on a part of the commission to open that discussion again and consider options, adjustments, maintaining as is, or lifting the limitation altogether. It's a mixed bag out there in terms of what other communities do. Lauren, you've done a little bit of research in Dane County, and what have you found in other communities?
In Dane County specifically, I looked at DeForest, Stoughton, Verona, and Middleton. I wasn't able to find a limitation on retail store sizes in those communities. But if you look at where those are located on a map, they're all along major highway corridors. So along the interstate, along 151 coming in towards Verona. So that might be the difference between putting one in those communities versus putting one here, is where those highway corridors are located.
To put Brian on the spot, Brian, you represent Mount Horeb as well. Do you know off the top of your head if they have retail size limits?
I do not know about Mount Horeb. I was just gonna comment on Verona. The Festival Foods went in there a number of years back. I can tell you that as part of that agreement, there is protections in place for the city if all of a sudden Festival no longer operates in that building and it becomes vacant. I know that that's one of the, my understanding of kind of the purpose behind these quote unquote big box ordinances. Effectively, one, people had a concern that, Walmart or somebody else was going to come in and wipe out your main streets. And now on the back end, the second is, and I know there are communities, and I'm not going to name one, but I'm very familiar with, where there's like 3 or 4 big boxes that are now empty. And you know what? It's not as easy to fill these big boxes as it is if you have, a strip mall where now there's a bunch of vacancies. You're ultimately probably going to find somebody who's going to go in there. So I would just point that out from the perspective of, if the village board is going to decide, or if the planning commission and the village board decide to modify the big box ordinance, you may want to consider adding some language to the ordinance to deal with circumstances of if and when it becomes vacant.
The other context I can add, I've been with the village for 13 years now, and considering hearing from potential economic development projects, I don't recall, and this is anecdotal, I don't recall having received a request from a retail user that would have exceeded 75,000 square feet. Now, that doesn't mean that the retail development community isn't aware of our code and simply doesn't bother with approaching us, or maybe makes their way to a landowner who is familiar with the code and tells them that that's not doable. For what it's worth, the Hy-Vee project, their proposed store is in the 60,000 and change size. As they approached their initial discussions with the village, that was the size they desired. There was not a press upon the village for a store larger. Now, that doesn't mean that they were already aware of the code and made decisions with regards to their proposal as such. But that's my Todd's anecdote of the day.
All right, Chris.
What was Festival's request? Was there a size on that one? Because that was probably also within the range.
I'm trying to remember, it might have been Mike, do you remember, a smidge larger, similar size, but certainly within the 75,000 cap.
I mean, I'm open to anything with learning if there's something that's to be learned. I have been under the impression Waunakee in general has wanted to stay a village. And I hear big box, I hear city, changing the whole look of Waunakee and the feel of Waunakee to a city at that point. And maybe that's the route the citizens would want. I don't know that. To stay a small quaint village, you're not going to start putting in all kinds of box stores throughout. I don't know that we have the land to do that necessarily either. The way our community is laid out, as I think it was Todd or Brian mentioned, Middleton, Sun Prairie, those DeForest, they have interstate and major highway access where they could put those facilities, and it's a lot easier for them. Here, we don't have that right now. I don't know if we'd even have the infrastructure to handle something those sizes. So if we open it up to 1, we open it up to 2, 3, 4, 5, and a lot of our space goes away with the potential of empty space.
Right. Thanks, Chris. Kevin.
Yeah, I'm in agreement that, I guess my first question is the board members that wanted us to look at it. Did they want to get rid of the limit altogether, or did they have a number in mind? Do you have a thought on that, Todd?
I am not absolutely certain. I could look to my left and see if there's a nod or a comment from a board member in the room who might be able to advise me, but I think generally they thought it was worth the consideration, particularly in light of community interest, or maybe I should say community concerns that progress hasn't been made more promptly on the addition of another grocer in town. And that there is potential, there's speculation that the limitations as we have them have, even if they're not warranted, have frightened away potential users in the grocery industry. That may be, I think that is one reason why there's interest in having this discussion to flush that out some more.
Right, but if you haven't heard that, I'm guessing that's not an issue, right? So I'd be inclined to say we're good where we're at.
Brian?
Yeah, I would agree. I think if there's been very little conversation about it, it appears it's just a certain faction that's maybe thinking that we need to have it to grow, and I don't know that we need to have it at this point. You know, it might change in the future, but right now I think we're good where we're at.
Joe?
I'm a little bit torn on it. If we were to change anything, I'd be inclined to maybe go up a little bit on the CUP end. Changing the 50,000, I think is that unnecessary. But in general, I would agree with the rest. I don't think it's really necessary at this point at all.
Right. So I've listened, I think we all have over the course of the last year, and especially with inflation, to concerns and worries people have over the price of food, and that competition within the village is perceived as bringing down prices for groceries in particular. My concern with big box retailers is that among other, what you've all said, their wage structure tends to be very low. They tend to be less inclined to provide benefits or full-time employment for their employees. And we have often talked as a village and had comments where living wages are really important within the village. And it's not necessarily a model that works when you've got a Walmart or a Target or a big box store. Now, that is not our concern necessarily as a plan commission, but it is something I feel like we have to take into consideration with any development that we invite in. My second thing is also future blight. Stores have a lifespan, and a 75,000, 125,000, 150,000 square foot store can be really difficult to fill. And we've seen in areas of Madison where they've been in business for a while and then and sat for a long time. And how do we use those spaces in a way that makes sense for a community can really be a challenge unless you're a much larger community than we are. So those are my concerns. I think we do have to really think hard how we're going to get more grocery competition in, and we're going to meet the needs of residents who cannot afford to spend what we're required to spend now with inflation, or prefer not to spend what some of our prices nationally are reflecting. But that's not necessarily a large format store, in my opinion. So, Chris, yeah.
So I'm gonna put Kevin on the spot right now, since he worked in grocery, in management of grocery for 10 years, a long time. Is this something that you believe would prompt grocers to say, oh yeah, we want to consider Waunakee now for grocery because they're at 150,000 square feet?
I don't think so. I think it's gonna go the other way very soon, just because with automation and everything else, I don't think they need the space that they've had in the past. If I thought tomorrow, if we raise that number, we'd get a grocery store here, I think we should talk about it. And I don't know if staff talks to any grocery stores that considered here on a regular basis, but it sure would be worth the question to just say, hey, we threw it out at a plan commission meeting. Would it move the needle if we push that number up? Cause then I think it'd be worthwhile talking about, but for right now, I don't think it's needed. And I don't believe if we raised it 20,000 feet, somebody would start digging tomorrow. I just don't.
And please ask me to stop talking if I need to stop, Brian. But Hy-Vee was kind of they're coming. We had a lot of negotiations with Hy-Vee, and There was I believe around a $6 million TIF request at that time when they first came to the village.
Well, to be clear, I don't think that Hy-Vee ever made the TIF request. I think it was the developer that had made the TIF request at that time. But yes, initially there was a TIF request.
Correct. And we said no. They withdrew it after it went down from 6 to 4 to 3 to 2, and so on and so forth. And you know, we don't have a grocery store. Maybe we could have put something in if we had chosen to give them TIF, which they didn't need it. But if we put something in, we could have held them to build in a certain amount of time. So I do agree right now that maybe they're in a spot, and Kevin, maybe you can share on this, because they have the land, they have the parcel, everything's ready to go. Are they preventing others from coming as a result of that? More than likely.
And I'm just speculating. I think it has a lot more to do with the economy that we're in right now. It's the labor force, it's the labor pool. It's just a tough place to build a grocery store right now. And I think that's what they're up against, regardless of what the square footage is or anything else.
Because we'd absolutely love to have another one here, but the reality of it is also that we have how many choices of grocers within 15 minutes of everybody here? There's quite a few within. Granted, it's not walkable,
Yeah.
but it's that we do have a lot of choices.
In relation to the Hy-Vee proposal and their interest in the Waunakee site, and whether they would desire anything different or larger. Last week, Lauren and I had a meeting with the government affairs rep for Wisconsin and Minnesota, representing Hy-Vee. Their message remains that they're committed to Waunakee and they like this site. This site is limited. It's a 10-acre piece of property, can't get any bigger. They're telling us they remain committed and like the site. Will there be changes to site plan? Yes, there will be. Keep in mind, their proposal was approved before the pandemic and a lot changed for grocers. Also keep in mind in the economy, with the economy, our contact indicated that Hy-Vee broke ground on no new stores, no new construction in 2023. They focused on distribution facility and they focused on acquisition of much smaller grocers in other markets. Oregon in particular, there was a smaller family-owned grocer that was acquired by Hy-Vee, converted into a smaller neighborhood type grocery store. That's what had occurred the entirety of this past year. And that remains the official word from Hy-Vee.
So I think it's interesting. I'll go off what Kevin said. So you can go to any grocery store, Target, Woodman's, I don't know if Metcalf's, but you can go to any of them, right? And it is incredible the number of people walking around the store with a cart, packing up a cart to go and either be picked up or dropped off. So to your point, less and less people are actually physically going to the store to get groceries or whatever. And then you throw in, the Amazon effect and everything that's getting purchased there. Nationally, malls, I mean, we can all talk about malls are dying, right? And they're trying to find a different way to use it and repurpose the space. And the space is becoming more entertainment, dining, groceries, very little clothing and stuff like that. So to create a bunch of big boxes, I think is going against the national narrative that's happening.
Can I maybe ask the commission, would you like a future discussion at the commission level where with staff performing more research on our neighboring communities like ours in the region, and the size of stores and types of stores that are locating, and bring that additional information to you? Or
I think that's interesting if it's recent history, right? Something that came in 20 years ago doesn't necessarily help because it's changed, right? Something in the last 5 years maybe provide some value. I don't know that I'd put a lot of effort to it, but it might be interesting to know. But I also go to the fact that if there isn't a lot of scuttle about it, do we really need to be looking at it?
But I like the idea, Todd. I really do. I mean, the more information we have, the better to make better decisions. So I think it's a good idea to see what everybody else is doing. I like the more recensive events to see what's been happening lately, because stats from 20 years ago don't apply anymore. That world has changed, but I'd love to see what everybody else is doing.
There was a really good presentation at the WITA conference. I don't know if you were in that or not, on retail and trends in retail, and that they are smaller square footprints. So all these Dollar General Scooters coffee instead of large sit-in coffee, a lot of just smaller retail is generating more dollars per square foot and more profitable. So I think we might have some resources that we can pull together on that.
Am I hearing that is it okay for us to bring this to you on another agenda?
Yeah.
Fill out more discussion? Okay.
Absolutely. Other questions or comments? No? Okay. All right, next item on the agenda then, and we don't need a motion for that. It sounds like we're not doing a motion for that. Discuss and take action on the possible creation of new zoning classification for heavy industrial uses. Item for final action by the Plan Commission. And Lauren, Todd?
Yeah, and a correction, a zoning change a new zoning code would be final action by the village board if it
Okay,
ever
you.
got to that point. Similar to the last item, we're looking just for some feedback on whether you would want to entertain a discussion on the topic. Thanks, Brian. To just sort of set the stage, why are we talking about this? You know that in 2023, we went through a process to, and we got pretty far down the road of being prepared to annex some additional land into the village, the Kaltenberg land. And we had very deliberate discussions at that time about users, including Intercon, who wished to expand, or to remain and expand, and Endress Manufacturing that was looking for additional site to expand in the community, with other potential ancillary users. Looking at that portion of the village, the north side of 19113, as a good potential suitable location for expansion of our business park, but expansion of our business park in a way that's different than our current park. Heavy industry intentionally, well, first of all, it's not in our code today, but if it were, I believe the intention of the village in the past was not for heavy industry to be what existed in the current business park, in particular along the 19113 corridor and that, you know, the tremendous visibility that exists upon that part of the park. I get that, and we're not suggesting that we consider a new zoning part of the zoning code to change what's happening in the current park. What we're wondering is whether we would care to consider an I3 classification to prep ourselves for the potential for a different type of industrial use, the ones I just mentioned, to be suitable when that growth does occur. To be clear, and we know this, that is within the growth area, the agreed upon urban growth area for the village. And there's about 80 acres in what I call the lower plateau of that area that is already nicely suited for a heavier industrial use. Topography there already creates an area, a visual buffer to a heavier use. We're already talking about the potential for an additional Waunakee Utilities substation, and that might present a good site for that, which would also dovetail nicely with a heavier industrial type use. It's true that you don't have to, we could add an additional zoning classification without having land classified as such. That's okay, legal to do. And this came up, we were actually sitting down with Endress and Intercon again just a few weeks ago to basically continue to have good communication with them, introduce them to Lauren. And there remains interest in this type of growth in the village. But one of them, I forgot who it was who said it, asked an interesting question. And that's, it would be good in terms of us putting together steps in entitlement to know whether, from a zoning perspective, the village would even welcome this type of use here. And Lauren and I kind of looked at each other. Does our current code do that? The answer, it doesn't entirely do that. And that may be one step to get out of the way, one step to entitlement to get out of the way, to have a code classification that they could fall under should development, annexation on and on, the steps proceed. So we'd be happy. This is a made wagon wheel already. And certainly we would want to make it in a way that fits our community. But the question is, would you want to start talking about that at a future meeting? Take a look at a sample zoning code and consider whether we should put that into black and white here within our code.
All right, I'll start the questions. So my first question is, if we were to have I3 heavy industrial, could we still control the type of industrial development that occurs? You use the word entitlement, so what is the extent to which we would be able to say yes or no to something? And I'm mindful of the fact that we're on the north end of the Yahara watershed. And so, and having come from an industrial community, understanding kind of some of the long-term implications of that, to what extent can we say yes or no if we have this in our code?
He left a moment too soon,
I know.
but I think Lauren and I could tag team on this. The unique opportunity we have now is that the discretion for the types of uses you would include either permitted or conditionally permitted within a district like this are the village's prerogative. You can choose what you believe are appropriate uses or appropriate types of conditions that you would not find acceptable. It's in the prerogative of the village in its creation of a new district. Now, once you create a district and establish permitted or conditionally permitted uses, you're then limited and can't discriminate based on a use if it meets the use that you've identified that you would allow or conditionally allow. Lauren, how did I do with that? Do you have any other insight, having done multiple comp plans in the past?
So related to the environmental side of that, one of the, I guess, benefits or effects of being in Dane County is it is one of the more environmentally protective counties. So it already would have to meet more stringent environmental regulations. But that is also something that you could consider when you're looking at the type of industry, is what kind of environmental effect does it have? So are you going to allow something like an intercon where it's mostly contained inside of a building versus mineral extraction or something that's a lot more land use intensive and could potentially cause like particulate environmental issues. So that is something that you would be able to consider in the development of this.
All right, thank you. That's my primary question. Chris, should we start with you?
Sure. I think we've already experienced a little bit of heavy manufacturing, and we had a library site that we had to use a national fund to get cleaned up, which is one thing. The other thing is, what ramifications happen to our roads? I'm assuming heavy means heavy, and the roads will be having to carry that more and more, which will be more costly from a repair standpoint, or just the initial investment to have a road that's going to be able to support that. I'm with you. If we can control it to a certain degree, I think that's important. And with your answer, it sounds like we might have that ability. I do agree that Dane County is going to be more stringent than most counties with regards to this, which is to our advantage. And we do want to protect our lakes. We're doing a lot right now to go back for years of so-called neglect, and we don't want to add to that problem potentially.
Yeah. Brian.
Well, I'm going to speak from a perspective of that area that originally was looked at. The infrastructure that is currently in place through whether it's the DOT or the county is already designed to carry loads, right? So it's not like it's coming out of downtown Waunakee and it's running on village streets, right? You can find locations where the infrastructure is set up. You can design the interior streets of some sort of development to handle that. I think that area with the access, immediate access basically out to the interstate is a potentially great opportunity for that. I think you'd be surprised at how much is already out there going on in those areas. And I guess I can speak from perspective or references. You've got an aggregate and asphalt plant that's a mile north that's running down that road every day. You've got another one, or you got 3 or 4 that are up on V that come down that way. the industrial applications that are already taking place there are fairly significant, and to add to that in that type of area, I don't think is going to cause a lot of negative for the area, and it's a great opportunity for Waunakee, so I'd be all for at least pursuing some sort of plans, you know, trying to figure out how to buffer and maybe transition in those areas from, you know, the light industrial and business parks that we have to, you know, and the residential that is in those areas to a heavy, you know, heavy industrial. How do you transition and make that fit? But I think I'd be all for at least pursuing it and see what that looks like.
And to be clear, we may be a long ways away from actually planning development of that area. We're specifically talking about code allowances to accommodate the types of uses we've heard interest from.
Joe?
First one is sort of a, I guess, functional question. Obviously, we can have conditional uses. Can basically everything that we would consider allowing under that be conditional use?
Lauren and I talked about this earlier today. That would be, I would expect that that's how we would design
Okay.
this code section.
Okay. And then the second, in light of all of the sustainability discussion lately, I would love to get some additional information either from Sustain Dane or from our sustainability committee that I don't think is probably quite ready for that yet, but as we move forward with this, I think that would be a useful piece of information.
All right, thank you, Joe. Kevin?
So when we started talking about this a year ago, I was certainly behind it. I liked the idea. I thought it made a lot of sense. I loved it because I always have a soft spot for longtime village partners, and that's who was interested in going out there. Secondly, I thought with the topography and trees, you could do it tastefully and it would still be a nice corridor to Waunakee, better than some of our other corridors, actually. I guess the question I have, Todd, is what killed it a year ago? I know it seemed to me that Westport wasn't behind it all that much, but is that what stopped it? I don't remember.
Yeah, it's a good question. Brian would say we're definitely off topic. I'll quickly mention that it was an independent decision made by the landowner. The timing just wasn't right for them. And, you know, our answer to that is that that's okay. And then the village board rescinded the annexation approval for anticipation of a better time when the stars are aligned.
And if it was going to go through, we were going to change the ordinance at that time?
If we wanted to accommodate under municipal zoning, the uses that both exist there today and we were anticipating based on the prior discussions.
I gotcha. Well, it certainly would have my vote to move forward and keep looking at the ordinance.
All right, so maybe bring something back to us and we can discuss it more. All right,
There may be some best practices too related to environmental considerations and heavy industry zoning. And we could probably start by seeking those out too.
I like the idea of conditional everything. So we can protect ourselves.
Good feedback. Thank you.
All right, Waunakee Westport Joint Plan Commission update. We have one?
Yes, we do. Three agenda items, 2 are from tonight. The Forward Development Group, Woodland Crest, and the Dolan Avenue will go to joint plan. And then there's also a public hearing on a final plat and rezone for Yahara Estates. They had come before last year at some point and then withdrawn, and now they're back again.
All right. All right, so it's tomorrow at 6 p.m. for those interested in attending and observing. All right, anything else for the good of the cause? If not, do we have another motion?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. See you guys next month.